If we can have a motion to approve the agenda with those changes.
I move that we approve the agenda with the changes just discussed by the chair.
Second. Oh.
We have a motion by Commissioner Blake, a second by Commissioner Butler. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Good deal. I'll also entertain a motion to approve tonight's staff reports.
I'll move that we accept tonight's staff reports.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Phillips and a second by Commissioner Clyde. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Good deal. Are there any declaration of conflicts and abstentions from the commission members tonight on these items? No? Sounds good. We'll go ahead then and we'll move on to item number, what's listed as item number 2 on the agenda. And that is a public hearing to consider the request of John Andrew Armstrong to amend City Code Section 1018 off-street parking standards by modifying parking requirements for retail and office uses only within the downtown village zone and limited to the downtown commercial sub-district. And Daniel, I think you have this one to present tonight, correct?
Yes, Chair. Chair, Commissioners, like I said, it's a pleasure to be right here in front of you guys, at least via Zoom. Today, item that I'm presenting today is, as you read it, is to modify, not to eliminate, but to modify the parking requirements, the minimum parking requirements for the village downtown zone only on the commercial district. So, Commissioners and Chair, every single time when a new use comes to the city, we usually refer to this table. It's a table that has been there for quite some time. To be honest with you, the last time that this was changed was 2006, and it's kind of, it's kind of like due for a change pretty soon, because we don't. These are all the uses that we have only, and then what we try to do when a use is proposed that is not within that, we try to look for something similar to it, and that's how we apply. We have a table with minimum number of parking spaces required for, like I say, for uses. What the applicant is proposing today, and let's focus on these two different ones. Business or professional offices, we require 1 stall per every 300 square feet of gross floor area. And then I want to focus on this one on retail, and we require 1 per 200 square feet of retail floor space, plus 1 space per 400 square feet on additional floors. Okay, so usually that's when they have a little bit of a storage. We apply the second one. And sorry about this, the way to do it is gonna be like this. I make the change ups in the one on the top, but not in here. And the proposal is as follows: to require for retail stores, this stays the same for every other zone, but in the commercial, and this is actually, there you go, that's how it is. I think in the staff report, I have it correct. Yeah, no, they're not either. So let's just focus on this one. So again, for retail stores, we require 1 per 200 square feet of retail floor space, plus 400, plus 1 for every 400 of additional floor. And then the amendment is as follows: in the commercial subdistrict of the downtown village zone, the requirement shall be 1 per 300 square feet of gross floor area. So pretty much we're using the same as what we have for offices, for built offices. Just as a reference, and what this change will do, I would like to refer to an area of town that we all know that is in our downtown subdistrict commercial zone, and is the business that are located on 100 South and Main Street. If we apply the code as how we have written right now, well, this business right here, this square of business, the 4 of them, Cocolitos, Simplicity, Pro Digital, and Cravings, we will require a total of 32 parking stalls. If we amend the code, the difference is 4 stalls. We require 28. But we have seen, based on previous experience and recent cases, where applicants, they decide to go for office instead of retail because for those 4 parking stalls. I cannot see it as we are penalizing for people who wants to bring sales tax into our city, that we require them extra parking. We know that in some cases, certain days of the year, there's a bigger demand for parking, but the new theories of planning, they said that parking usually regulates itself. However, that's not the case that we're doing right here. We're not eliminating the minimum requirements at all. We're just changing what we require for retail and making it the same of what we will require for an office. By doing that, we expect and we hope that more sales tax uses are coming into our city. That's what I have, Chair.
Thank you. Any questions for staff?
So Daniel, those parking stalls, are they required on the front, the back? So where would they be required?
The parking stalls that we will require, they need to be within the property lines. Did I stop share? I stopped sharing, right?
Yes.
Yes. Let me go back to sharing an image. Share screen. Those parking stalls are required. If we can take a look right here, we have certain couple of white lines. Okay, so those parking stalls or those minimums will be required to be within those lines. The parking in the front is parking that the city provided, and it was a great move by the city, by the way, and it has helped a lot. But those 28 parking stalls, or those 32 parking stalls, will be required in this area right here, because most of this business are already they're fronting. They have 0 setback in the front. But just for these ones. But for example, if there's a business going in this one right here, okay, the parking could be on the front or in the back. It doesn't matter as long as it's within their property lines. I don't know if did that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
Daniel, how many unallocated parking stalls are there in this zone? I mean, I'm assuming the ones around the city park are not allocated to any certain business or designated. Are there other stalls in the area that could be used generally by anybody that aren't allocated to a certain business?
Riley, can you please repeat the question to me?
Yeah, she's asking, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you okay.
So she's asking how many parking spaces in the zone are not allocated towards any particular business, like these parking spaces right here.
The number of all these parking stalls?
That's correct, right?
Oh, I don't have a number, the specific number of how many we have. We just try to put as many as we could fit, but I don't have a number. I think that we, and just as a comment, these parking stalls are not allocated to the business right here. I mean, there's nothing that we said these parkings were specifically for the business in front of them. They don't own those parking stalls. The city owns them, and anyone can park wherever they want. It's not strange that rare that someone parks right here, and then walks to Cocolitos right there. I don't have a specific number, Commissioner, on how many parking stalls the city has provided.
That's okay. So when an applicant comes to us and they're trying to prove that they can provide sufficient parking for their business, then where does that parking come from?
It has to be within their property.
Within their property
Yeah.
line? Okay,
Yes.
so outside of the property lines, there is general parking.
Yeah, but that won't count for the square footage
Right.
that they're doing.
I'm just trying to consider if we were to reduce the requirement, whether there would be additional parking to accommodate
Probably not,
those
because the whole zone, right?
holidays or those times when there is more retail traffic.
I think there's some areas where there'll be plenty, like right there with Cocolitos, you're right across the street from the park, and there's all those areas there, that downtown street, probably perfectly fine. But I think if you were to zoom out, Daniel, and show us the larger area that we're talking about, there's probably gonna be some areas where that's not the case.
So I've had some retail centers that have been in other cities where they fall into as a retail commercial. So you could have them as offices or retail, it doesn't matter. And I've had them for almost 20 years. And over those years, it really depended on the kind of business that was there, whether the parking became an issue or not. And I've got one right now that I have a vet in that has taken over more than half the building because he's been really successful, and it's really caused a strain on the parking. But everything fell within the requirement. It just happened to be how his business was, right? I personally don't really see a problem with this because what we're really trying to do within this zone, it was one thing if this was an amendment for every zone, but I think you're trying to give a downtown feel, you're trying to give something like that. And I agree with Daniel. I think if they're opposite of each other, right, like business is 5 or office is 5 and retail is 7, I know as a developer every time you're going to go to the 5. And I do think that shoots us or hurts us. That's just kind of what I think of it as of right now and stuff like that. That those need to be the same, whatever that is. It needs to be somewhat the same. But I don't know if they're always built based off the busy time of the year, Christmas or whatever.
But a retailer has to factor in their business model and what their business need is. And I think that's to Daniel's point
Yep.
about self-regulating.
Yep.
Let's hope we have a business person who understands what they're spending and investing their money into, because if they are putting something that's gonna have a huge parking need and they're going into a place that doesn't require it and therefore doesn't have it, they're hosed. But that's a self-regulating choice.
See, I'm creating more parking in the back because it's an issue, but that wasn't required by the city.
I have more of some logistical concerns with these parking requirements. If we take, for example, the Cravings store, the cupcake store there,
Yeah.
and, I hope they never do, but let's say they leave someday and go to a different city. We have a new applicant come in that wants to put their business in there, and we say, well, you need one parking stall for 300 square feet. Where are they going to put that?
They won't, so then the building becomes not usable based off what it is now.
Well, and that's kind of what I'm saying is, do we need to do I mean, because I don't know where any of those businesses right there are gonna put parking that will work on their property lines there.
So Daniel, let me ask you this question, if you can hear me. With that said,
Okay.
that Todd's talking about, is this more based off new construction or is this based off a business license?
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, yes. So it's on new constructions only. If for some reason Cravings leave and a new business comes, the non-conformity of the business stays with the land, never with the applicant. So this is already a non-conforming situation in regards to parking for retail. So if someone wants to bring retail or office, something like that, it's already any commercial use. It's already granted because it already exists.
That
So it
makes
stays
more
with them.
sense then.
So, okay, so all those buildings there along Main Street, they're gonna have a legal non-conforming use that goes on with, well, at least the parking requirements won't change for those buildings as long as they don't build new. If somebody comes in and knocks down, say on lot 67 there, that house that's been through a couple of different businesses, somebody knocks that down and builds new, we're gonna enforce these parking requirements then. Right, but then
Yes.
there's space there and they plan for it.
What degree of construction counts as new construction? You used the example of knockdown, but does an interior remodel gonna affect that?
It's gonna be a percentage
No.
of the building.
No, an interior model doesn't affect that. Actually, I think we have a definition of what's non-conforming and what not, and I think our definition says that as soon as when you remove certain walls, that's how our definition says that if you leave one or two walls, something like that, it still qualifies as the non-conformity or non-compliance of the building is kept.
Okay. Well, thank you. I feel more comfortable about this. after that.
Is there any reason why we didn't go more generous for the parking? So say 400 square feet per one? Any reason why it's not more generous? Just out of curiosity.
Oh, is that a question? Yeah. So, you know what? And this is something that we discussed in the work session. But eventually, I think that we're gonna start seeing more and more cities. I was reading a couple of them who did it in Idaho, who are removing all minimum requirements for the downtown zone for the commercial uses. We are not doing it right here, and this request didn't come from a staff. It came from an applicant, from Drew Armstrong, and I think based on certain conventions that he has attended, I've been to those conventions, and that's his application, that's his requirement.
So Commissioner Butler, I think that also that we look at this one just on Main Street, which is, the Main Street, right? But that zone, Daniel, if you can zoom out, it's a lot bigger area, right? They could have a different kind of an impact than what you'd want to feel into that Main Street. So
Yeah.
I think you'd still want to stay there because there's a big area, right? That covers.
Sorry, I interrupt. My bad.
You're good. Can you zoom
Can
out
I
just a little bit more?
Yeah, please, Daniel.
Yeah.
Go.
We just want to say that in recent applications, we have had recent applications. There's a difference. For example, in this empty lot right here, for someone to do retail or office, right now they will choose office. Same thing happened with this development right here. We did this. In my opinion, these buildings are really great in how we did them and how we got them there. The applicant is thinking about putting finishing in the area and put two more another building like this one, but this requirement does affect a lot on applicants for some reason, whether they go retail or they go office. So this has an impact, and I think, but we are not completely removing the requirement. We're only making it easier for people to or developers to bring retail into or sales tax generating uses into our downtown zone.
So if our goal is to encourage retail over the professional uses of the offices, do we want to consider making it that much more attractive? Would it make it that much more attractive to a developer? And if we went one per 400 square feet versus one per 300 square feet, is that going to be the reaction in your opinion? And I think the applicant might have something to say on that when we give him a chance to talk, but okay. Well, good. Any other questions for staff? All right. Thank you. And the applicant is here. Mr. Armstrong, if you'd like to come up and say something, you're welcome to.
I can talk a little bit better. How you guys doing?
Doing well.
I served on the planning commission here for 4 years, and currently on the county planning commission and on the design review board for Pleasant Grove. While I was here, and I guess it's kind of something that I had some experience with before, because it's been 25 years, but we did quite a bit of redevelopment in downtown Provo. And I served on the Downtown Business Advisory Board in downtown Provo. I got to be the secretary because I was only about 25 years old at that point. But I learned a lot, and you can see some of the results of what Provo's been able to do And I won't take credit for it. They put the first parking garage that is back behind Provo Town Center in about 1988. And since then, they've built 5 different parking structures, and they're paid for. And I've suggested to Scott Darrington that eventually that's the kind of thing where you put a little bit of a sales tax overlay, that there's a quarter cent of everything that's spent that goes down there that pays for those, and then the city builds the parking structures. That's how that goes. The one at the hotel is 50% paid for by the city. The one that's at the Zions Bank building, 50% paid for by the city. And they've done that in order to encourage a redevelopment of the downtown. Pleasant Grove is 1 year younger than Provo is. And so when these lots were subdivided and the development was put in, people drove horses, right, instead of cars. And we didn't have any zoning and no parking structure requirements. And the reason that was the case, obviously, is because it only made sense to put the stores in the downtown. And so people just did that, and they kind of designed that, and that was the common sense kind of thing. Everywhere else was homes around the downtown, and then farms and things like that. So what we're seeing is we're seeing a reduction in parking requirements. In Salt Lake City, they've reduced parking requirements. They've eliminated drive-throughs for banks. You can't do a drive-through in Salt Lake City anymore for a bank. And they've done this because they found that they're overparked, and the thing that really drove that and exacerbated the understanding of how overparked they were was City Creek. If you go down to City Creek, there's probably 2 days, 3 days a year when it's full, when the parking's full. And even there, it's not full. What you see is full to some degree, but I don't know how many of you have gone down to the very, very bottom level. Even during Christmas, it's empty. And then they also have some lifts that they put in there for residential lifts. And the residential parking areas in there, finally, I've sold several units in the residential area over there, in the different buildings that are there. And those buildings are finally full, and the parking is still empty. So they for the new buildings, they've changed the parking code completely. The new building at City Creek will be completely, pretty much parked by existing parking that they've already put in. There's some. I actually was up there looking at that building today, and they're putting some in. But as far as the retail part of that, they're not required to build retail parking over there or anything like that. So it's one of those things. When I was on the Planning Commission, I loved going to the AAPA conferences, and you should avail yourself of that as much as possible, because you learn some amazing things. And my favorite one was downtowns. I'm a real estate broker, and at the time, right when I got on the Planning Commission, the Cocalitos building used to be Smith's Market, and that had just been redeveloped by Jared Osmond. And Jared is a client of mine. I actually ended up selling that building for him. And I sold the one that's on the other end of the block, that is the one that has the dog spa in it and the 8-plex. And I actually years ago sold the one that is now Pro Digital Photo. And so I know the block pretty well, and somebody called me up and said, hey, this empty lot here, we need to sell it. And I started thinking about that, and I love downtowns. I love vibrant little downtowns. And I'm not alone in that. A couple of years ago, it's probably 3 years ago now, I don't know if you remember the big survey that we had 400 responses that went out to all the citizenry, and there were a lot of questions to that, but when they filled those all out, the thing that everybody said is there was a real consensus that everybody loved our downtown and considers the downtown the heart of our community, not the Grove, the downtown. And I want to have a vibrant downtown. I want to have a vibrant downtown that's like Provo, like what they ended up with down in Provo. And it takes a while, but every time I got to go to the AAPA conferences, I always was attracted to the downtown revitalization kind of courses that they would teach and the lectures that they had. And we're getting so close. There's one guy that's kind of considered the expert on downtowns, and he has a 10-10-10 rule, and we're so close to that, where you have 10 places that you can get a bite to eat, 10 places that are open after 6 o'clock, and 10 places where you can drop in and buy something, some kitschy something. And Simplicity is a perfect example of that. But at the same time, we also have to look at, when we're looking at parking requirements, the type of businesses that are leasing these are very different than they used to be. Because almost all of these little businesses, and they're in high demand, we just are turning one over in the building that I did build, the EBL Eyelashes place. And we're putting a new business in there, and there is a lot of demand. I kind of can pick and choose, and I'm hoping that I'm picking something that'll be good for the downtown. Even during COVID, there's demand for that type of a storefront. But, what was I? This 10-10-10 rule means that you can get to a point where the downtown will roll on its own. And so it's a place where people want to go and want to enjoy the downtown, and businesses attract more businesses. And obviously across the street from 67, which is the lot that we own, which we will be seeing you again with a proposal for a new building shortly. That's going to be very similar to the building that we already built at 45 South Main, which is the one that has the chocolate shop and EBL in it. We're trying to do our part on our side of the street, but it's very difficult. It would be cheaper when I bought that property. It would be cheaper for me to go, and it was available, and buy the piece of property that is out in the Grove across the street from doTERRA per acre. Because the downtown the lots are tiny, and you have a parking requirement that's very hard to match up to what, development of commercial mixed use. The mixed use is a great idea that got put in place, because as a city, what we're trying to do is figure out a way to make it so that it's valuable enough for people to redevelop properties that have already been developed. And it's a tight fit, but it'll happen if we can make it so that there is a way that it makes sense. Dustin, you had, Commissioner Phillips, you had asked about holiday parking and things like that. And one of the things that there's a really good article, lots of good articles. One of my favorite places to look for about development is Strong Towns. I don't know if you guys have been there, but it says, perceptions of not enough parking are ubiquitous in nearly every city in America. Everyone thinks they have a parking problem, but is there actually a shortage of parking in your downtown or neighborhood business district, or is the situation more complicated than it seems? Very often there's ample parking within a few blocks of a popular destination, but drivers don't know how to find it. Or there's a trade-off between closer parking, which they must pay for, versus further away parking that's free. Or they expect to find parking directly in front of the destination and react emotionally when the expectations are violated. There usually isn't a parking shortage. What might be causing the perception that there is? And then it goes through and it gives you instructions on how sometimes a signage issue can fix your parking problem, or make an arrangement with some different businesses or things like that. And what we have in our downtown, if you really think about it, when was the last time you saw a problem other than Strawberry Days?
Never.
Trying to find parking in our downtown. It would actually be really nice if we had a bigger parking problem than we do, because that would reflect well on our city. And then we can start looking at different methods to resolve those. It's going to take a long time to create an overlay district that would pay for building very expensive parking structures or anything like that, but we are a long ways away from that. But if we got to there, that would be amazing for our downtown. And I'm hoping that we can do our part with what we have decided to do with downtown, and we hope we can bring another building with another 4 storefronts into the downtown, and more people into the downtown. And I think that if we set a good example on our side of the street, then maybe somebody on the other side of the street will do something that's amazing and beautiful as well. So, do you have any other questions for me?
Is the 1 in 300 sufficient? Do you like that?
I would love it if it was 400. Daniel was a little worried about bringing it to you, I think. But the more attractive you make the downtown for redevelopment, obviously the more likely you are to get to the point where it works. The thing is, in reading that little excerpt, what's going to happen if somebody has a hard time finding a place at Cocolitos during a Valentine's Day when you have somebody coming? What ends up happening is it spills over to the other guy's parking. And I mean, honestly, that could be the library. It could get to the point where we have to put signs up somewhere or deal with that in a different way. But at this point, and I became a commissioner right after Cocolitos got remodeled into what it is from Smith's Market. And I will tell you that I brought that up and I said, what parking standard did you follow for this? There was no parking standard that was followed. That's not reflective on anybody that works for the city at this point, but there wasn't a parking standard that was applied at all for the redevelopment of Cocolitos, of that building, of the Smith's Market. But are any of us really upset with what happened there? If we had a blighted building there instead, I think that would be a real problem. Heck, our city gave Jared Osmond an award for that building because we were so happy that it actually came and became a part of our downtown. And it kind of led the way and set an example that we could have some retail redevelopment in our downtown. So the people will find parking in the downtown. The city has provided some. You sit there and you say, these are my spaces. We need to do that, especially for residential, but for retail. When Cocolitos is busy, Pro Digital Photo is closed, right? And when the chocolate shop is busy because it's Valentine's Day, it's not the rush time for another business. The antique shop isn't busy. And so what ends up happening is people move and they use the other guy's parking when they're busy. So people are going to find parking. And obviously, if it gets to the point where it's bad, then the developer says, okay, we're going to lose business because we don't have this resolved well. They'll figure out a way to make it so that you don't have a problem there. And we want to be really good neighbors to all our neighbors there. We were about ready to go ahead and do the project that we are getting ready to do again now in our downtown, and we'll come and bring that to you in the next couple months here and propose that. And honestly, our bank died, and so that was a problem. We had to go and refigure, and we've waited, and we're at a point where we can. But the building that we're doing is a little bit less than what we had planned on, and it's a little bit less in our parking requirement as well, because the parking is tough to find down here. But there's me, and I could resolve this issue a different way than asking for a code text amendment in the downtown. But this will help our downtown. And helping our downtown helps me as a business owner in the downtown long term. It's one of those, the rising tide lifts all ships, and we need to do that in order to make it so that we have other people who will redevelop, that will make it so that my property is more valuable and my lessors that are in the storefronts have more customers that come and everything like that. It's important to do this as a city, not just for Drew. So, you have any other questions for me?
I don't have any other questions. Any other questions for the applicant? That was great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Drew. This is a public hearing. We'll go ahead and open up the public hearing. If anybody from the public would like to come, we'd invite you to come to the pulpit and speak. Looks like there are no comments. We'll go ahead and close the public hearing portion and bring it back up to the commission for discussion.
I am in favor of this. In fact, I'm in favor of doing the 1 per 400 because when I think of downtown, I'm thinking of Main Street. But my only concern is, I know that doesn't just include that. So my concern would be, are there any other areas as we expand our view of this zone that this would be applied to, that we would be concerned at expanding that?
I think it would be a good idea to have Daniel open up the map and show us the entire zone that we're talking about.
Yeah, I agree.
Daniel, can you do that?
Yes, sir.
To that point, I think every one of Drew's comments about the shared parking and the evolution in the downtown is spot on. I mean, that's exactly what happens. And there's the other areas, whether it's the library or the park and all that, within that close proximity. To your point, I'm just not sure about the rest of the
Right.
zone.
I know if that's all we were talking about, I'd be like, sure. But I just want to make sure that we're not putting some restrictions on other outlying areas that may not be dealing with that same situation.
Well, see, the thought that comes to my mind is if we're thinking only of Main Street, we're thinking of, smaller lot size than if we were to go down Center Street. And so if we're looking at Center Street, there's bigger lots that can allow for parking, like Daniel said, on the front or the back. So we're not infringing, so to speak, on other businesses in those areas because there's more space. There's more room for those parking spots. So I'm with you. I don't mind 1 to 400, my personal opinion.
I was looking at the other parking requirements for the other types of uses. The only one that allows more than 1 per 400 is furniture and appliance stores, which allows for 1 per 600 square feet, or I guess fewer spaces, I should say, as a set minimum. But, I mean, if really right now, if what staff's indicated is correct, that as developers are coming in at 1 per 200 is forcing people to want to build offices at 1 per 400. I really want to encourage retail as much as we can throughout the rest of that area and not offices. I'd like to make it more attractive, and I support the idea of 1 per 400. I think you're still getting adequate parking for the types of shops that are coming in there. Yes, those lots are bigger, but we're not talking massive retail shops going in there.
No, it's not a Sears like what was
Yeah.
mentioned earlier.
They're bigger, but they're not bigger.
Right, they're bigger,
mean-
but they're not.
It's not a
And-
box,
and-
it's not a box store.
Well, even what I'm saying is even on Center Street, when you zoom down in on those,
They're deep and
they're,
long.
they're deep, but there's not a lot of frontage, which is really what you want for retail. So what, in my mind, doing some development, not obviously as much as you, it as much as the applicant, it just, when I look at a place like this, what makes it prohibitive in a certain aspect is you almost have to buy multiple lots to really make
do
a
something
big,
larger.
a really good project going on, right?
Yeah.
And so it's difficult, and I think sometimes we get stuck, or there's a code that sits there forever that actually prohibits any growth. I mean, you've still got to go to the cost of the development, cost of knocking something down. Can you get the retails? Can you actually get the rent base off that street? That's why everybody attracts to like a State Street, because of how many cars drive by it, right? So that one I have in Linden, 34,000 cars drove by that in 2002 when I built that building in a day. Now that section's 88,000, right? So that changes the rents, it changes the visibility. There does become a point. And so all development, all aspects like that come back to cost, right? And what I can get for the rent and how much it's going to cost me. And in my mind, if we're trying to keep this together, I agree with all you guys that maybe the look and the feel and what you're trying to get there, and to be able to establish that, and over years to be able to build it, I don't see the parking being that issue. And there's been very few places. I mean, I used to go to the Jazz game all the time, and the hidden gem was if you parked across the street in the south and went all the way to the basement, there was nobody down there. You could just ride up from Fleming's and walk across to the stadium, right?
That's what we do
It was
every
easy.
time.
And I think there's a lot of, I agree that there's a lot of places like that. There's nothing that drives me more crazy than going to a place like Macy's. 99% of those parking stalls never get used, ever.
Yeah.
Daniel, are there any areas in this particular zone that you would be concerned about us going to the 1 per 400 square feet? I mean, are there areas outside of that Main Street area that we're generally thinking of that may need to have a more restrictive?
Not at all. I think that going to 1 for 400 is a good move. I mean, we wish we had a problem with parking for retail. That means that business is doing amazing. I think in regards to retail, there's no harm to apply it to the whole zone. I think it should be applied to the whole zone because there's other businesses that it's not just in the Main Street, but like I mentioned, like right here in this area or right here in this area, you know, if we have retail, the more sales tax that we can bring, the better. And as we have said something that resonate a lot to me is like every city planner really wishes that we had a parking problem with retail. It means that the place is doing really good. So I don't see any concerns to apply it to the entire zone. This is only for retail uses. We're not changing it for residential. Residential is the same. I think the residential parking is exactly what causes problems more than retail or office or
Yeah, I
any
think so
commercial
too.
use. So I don't see a single harm in applying it to the entire zone.
Thanks, Daniel.
Well, if there's no further discussion, I'll entertain a motion.
So before you do that, Daniel, I've got a question for you. We're throwing stuff out here, 1 in 300, 1 in 400, like Todd read, you know, there's 1 in 600 for like a furniture store. If we're going to make this move and do this code text amendment, is 1 in 400, in your opinion, good? Does it need to be more than that, less? Is that the right number, in your personal opinion?
And we'll even go professional opinion.
Professional opinion.
In my professional opinion, we shouldn't require minimums at all for retail. I think that it regulates by itself. I think I mean, if you're gonna put a business and you think that you need a lot of parking, you put a lot of parking. If you don't think you need that many, you would. I think that in the professional opinion of a planner and how according to the studies I've done, I wouldn't require any single minimums for retail in the
Should
downtown
we have
zone.
some fun with the city council and forward that, see what they do with that?
And
That's my opinion as a city planner, right? In this case, we have I going to 1 to 400. I think it's good to get our feet in the water. You know, we put our toes first to see how things go.
Well,
1 to
And
475?
What if we did match the furniture and appliance stores and go 1 per 600? It seems a little bit more attractive. No offense to the developers in the room, but I don't think I trust developers as much as you do, Daniel. I wish I did, but
Wow.
Drew, that was on the record. That was recorded.
that was not directed at anybody individually in the room. I promise. But I'm all in favor in doing what we can to encourage more retail and make it easier for developers to want to do retail in the city without causing future problems. And I don't know that I feel comfortable saying there's no minimum, but I wouldn't even mind going to that 1 per 600.
Well, you just think of the businesses, like if it is the furniture, 1 to 600, that's awesome.
I just feel like the
that's-
businesses that are gonna go in down here, though, we can't really compare to like a furniture
No.
store. So
No, the items that they sell will be much
Yeah.
smaller. More people can get in there and move it out. But at the same time, I still don't think we're going to have these massive retail stores that are going to have this huge drive
The
that's going
mar-
to take up
yeah.
all the parking within the zone. And we're
The
gonna have
market
problems.
yeah, developers in the market, it just will regulate itself.
I think you hit a 1 to 500. I agree, even with myself, though, like, I couldn't anticipate actually what was going to be there. But I always feel like it's just over the top in parking.
Yeah. 1 to 500, that's what you think?
I think 1 to 500 is a better sweet spot.
500 sounds good.
Well, can we get an
Well,
actual
since I don't
motion
have my
to
glasses
second?
and can't read the motion.
Daniel, can you tell us exactly, so in our staff report, or at least the one that I have in front of me, it has the word accept, it's like a comma, accept, but you changed that to just read as a new sentence? Like we took out the word accept and it just says
In the commercial zone?
floors, period, okay.
Can you guys refresh it?
It's there, we can see it.
We can see what you
Okay.
did right there.
Yeah, so you guys can see it. It's actually like this. So I put the older version. This is the version that the language that we work with Tina, with the city attorney. Is a period, and then in the commercial subdistrict of the downtown village zone,
Okay.
the requirement shall be 1 per 300 square feet of gross floor area.
But you
So
guys
it's
wanna-
more like that.
Okay, but you guys want to go to 5?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
I think you should go 5.
All right, I'll make a motion. I move the planning commission forward a recommendation of approval to the city council for the proposed amendments to city code section 10-18-3, minimum number of parking spaces required by modifying parking requirements for retail and office uses only within the downtown village zone and limited to the downtown commercial subdistrict. The amendment to state that 1 per 200 square feet of retail floor space plus 1 space per 400 square feet in additional floors, period, in the commercial subdistrict of the downtown village zone where the requirement shall be 1 per 500 square feet of gross floor space for retail stores. That is, let's see, and adopting the exhibits, conditions, and findings of the staff report and is modified by no conditions, actually. So adopting the exhibits, conditions, and findings of the staff report.
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion by Commissioner Blake, a second by Commissioner Clyde. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great, motion carries. Thank you. We'll now hear item number 1, which is a public hearing to consider the request of Gregory Cook for a 2-lot preliminary subdivision plat called Cook's Hollow Subdivision Plat A on property located at approximately 1101 West, 2600 North in the RR Rural Residential Zone. Riley, I believe you'll be presenting this to us.
Okay, thank you. Okay, this is a request for a 2-lot preliminary subdivision called Cook's Hollow Subdivision Plat A. Here's the zoning map. It's located in the RR Rural Residential Zone. And here's an aerial. Also, here's the proposed plat. Neither of these 2 lots, Lot 1 or Lot 2, have ever been part of a recorded subdivision, and street improvements for both of the lots are existing. Both lots meet all minimum requirements for the RR Rural Residential Zone, which is a minimum area of half an acre, minimum frontage of 60 feet, and a minimum width of 110 feet. Because the proposed plat meets all requirements for subdivisions and for the RR Rural Residential Zone, planning staff recommends approval.
Sounds good. Any questions for staff on this item?
Riley, I think you said there's an existing structure on Lot 2, is that correct?
That's
And that will
correct.
remain
Yes.
there? Okay.
Yep, there's an existing home located on Lot 2, and that home meets all required setbacks. There's also a home and 2 accessory structures being built on Lot 1, and all those structures meet all setback and other requirements for the zone.
Sounds good. Any other questions for staff? Thank you, Riley. And is the applicant here on this? You can come up and you can say something if you'd like to, but you definitely don't have to. We'd ask you to come up to the microphone just because it is recorded.
Good evening. I'm Cody Martin. I represent Magleby Construction and Cooks. And if any questions you guys may have that you would like answered, I could do that, but I don't really have anything prepared.
Any questions for the applicant?
Nope.
I think we're okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, this is a public hearing. We'll go ahead and open up the public hearing portion and invite anybody to come up and speak on this item if they'd like to. Looks like there are no public comments. We'll go ahead and close the public hearing and bring it back up to the commission. for discussion, or I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion. I move the planning commission forward a positive recommendation of approval for the request of Gregory Cook for a subdivision plat called Cook's Hollow Subdivision Plat A on property located at approximately 1101 West, 2600 North in the RR Rural Residential Zone, and adopting the exhibits, conditions, and findings of the staff report, and as modified by the conditions below, that all final planning, engineering, and fire department requirements are met.
I'll second it.
We have a motion by Commissioner Butler, second by Commissioner Clyde. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Thank you. We'll go ahead and we'll continue on to the agenda with the review and approval of the minutes from the January 14th, 2021 meeting. I had a few comments. I did not change it to a passive aggressive voice. I changed it from a passive to active voice. There was some confusion about that in the last.
I disagree with that.
You know, I'll let you voice an opinion if you read it.
That's a good point, Todd.
The rest of them were just a couple of cleanup items.
I move that we adopt the minutes from the January 14th meeting with the changes as specified by Commissioner, or Chair
Vogel.
Vogel. I didn't call you by your first name.
That's fine too.
I'll second it.
So we have a motion by Commissioner Blake, a second by Commissioner Clyde. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn if there's no further business.
I'll move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I think at some point,